right, everybody. I am Brandon Prophet, and this is Prophet FM. Today we are joined by Vito Thomaselli. How's it going, Vito?
It's going. Talking to Brandon Prophet. If you would have told me a year ago you and I'd be sitting down having a conversation on a podcast, I'd probably say, "What? How'd that happen?"
Oh yeah, no, it was kind of weird because during that time that I quit wrestling. By the way, I hate. We talked about it briefly last time. I hate when people say retire from wrestling. Like if you didn't make like a career money, then you didn't retire. You quit.
So I listened to your episode, which we'll obviously get into as we roll through this. But I was screaming at the top of my lungs, like, "Yes, finally. That's my line, man. No, you quit. You fucking quit doing this."
Yeah, to me it's ridiculous how many people have just this self-inflated ego, and I know that's so many people at wrestling. It's ridiculous,
insane.
But it's like I said before, I actually, for a short amount of time, I legitimately made a living being a wrestler. It was my only job. I paid my bills doing it.
No shit.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
What did you make? I mean, you're out of it now. What was your best year?
I couldn't tell you like an exact amount, but I was asking 250 in trans, and I didn't have any trouble getting it from especially like small promoters. I remember I would do shows in like this guy in Richmond would book me, and I hate to do this because he's a nice guy, but the shows were not very good.
Like you said on your last episode, you got to be fucking honest, man. You bullied your other buddy into fucking speaking the truth. So now it's your turn. I got you, Keith.
Yeah, the guy's nice, man. I talk to him sometimes on Facebook, but the shows were not very good. You can always ask American Kickboxer about it sometimes. He doesn't have a whole lot of friendliness to say about the shows, but there would literally be there would be a ring, and there would be like one row of chairs against one wall and like two rows against the other.
Sure.
And he was charging $6 a ticket to get in, and he was legitimately paying me more than twice of what a sellout would be. Easy, because he was paying me, so.
Who cares? Just go with it. Fuck it.
Yeah,
you know what, man? I learned a long time ago. You can't worry about that shit.
Well,
you just can't. And you got to take the money because that guy's not going to be in business. He doesn't belong in business, so he's only going to be there for a very short period of time.
Well, Sharon, and it is what it is. I mean, I legitimately did some stupid crap, which I'm sure you did as well. But I had a short window, so I had to get paid.
Absolutely. Yeah, shit. So very cool. Well, I'm glad to be on the show, and welcome to One Gimmick World, man. We love what we do over there, and I like to have another show come on board. So, what was the reason behind it? What made you want to do the show?
Well, honestly, we used to do these things called Prophet FMs. I'm not sure if anybody even listened to them, but it used to be like me and Die Hard and Drake, and I think I want to say that Chuck Taylor was on one, but that could be a lie. And we used to just tell stories about because I used to live with it was me, this guy who he works some shows locally. He's like my real life best friend. His name he works shows as Dayton Suave for IPW. And then two other guys who weren't into wrestling, but we used to all live in this townhouse, and we had shenanigans all the time. Drake pretty much. I mean, he stayed there nonstop. Die Hard was over there, and it was crazy some of the stuff that happened over there, stuff that I would never want my kids to know about.
Sure.
Yeah. But we used to just tell the stories about girls ratting out in the living room. Well, there'd be like 40 dudes in the living room and people recording it, and this girl's just going to town and stuff like that. And so I kind of made a joke about wanting to do a podcast about barbecue and aliens, and then you were like, "Hey, get on and do this." So here we are. So,
that we have room for that kind of talk.
Yeah, sure. One thing I wanted to ask you about, man.
Yeah.
As you know, the big news here. Going from Balls Mahoney now Chyna died. What are your thoughts on that?
Not even kind of surprised. Shocked she made it this long. The last year of her life, she probably didn't belong on the earth. I mean, I think she's been living the most unhealthy lifestyle of anybody. So I'm not shocked by it. I saw her, when was she in TNA, 2009 or 2010 or something, and she was like, it was as if I hit the backward slow motion button, and she was just barely doing the fucking motions, and I was like, this girl's I thought she was gonna be dead back then. So that's kind of my point. She checked out in my mind a long time ago. What do I think about it? Dude, I'm numb to it at this point. It's just another wrestler from that time frame that fucking died, man. It just is what it is. There's so many. I mean, they lived a complete different lifestyle. Complete different fucking lifestyle. So I don't know.
It's kind of crazy. Like when you see like all these guys, you know, like Balls Mahoney, and I was fortunate enough to know him a little bit, you know, and
me too.
You see all these people, man, and they were just like party animals, like just crazy party animals, and now we kind of live in a world where so many wrestlers are so strict into fitness and health and you know, living fairly clean lifestyles. It's just kind of crazy, really.
But let me say this much, man. It's opiates. Opiates steal your soul. And then look at these people that are hooked on medical opiates, like from the good old doctor. They're dying too. The death tolls every year for pharmaceutical drugs. It's no different. So we just categorize wrestling as a certain thing, but it's opiate addictions with depression. You combine those two things together, it's a fun nightmare, a fucking nightmare. We told this tons of times on one of my podcasts over at One Gimmick World that, you know, I used to tote Scott Hall around, like one of the last couple of years that he was in real bad shape with JCW. Whenever they bring him in, we just drove him around. He felt comfortable with us, you know, and after a while, it became an annoyance. We like marked out to it in the beginning, right? Because he's full of knowledge. Even wasted, he's full of fucking knowledge. Sure. But then it became a fucking nuisance. And one night we took him up to his hotel room in a wheelchair. He was all fucked up. And we wheel him in his fucking room and he stands up and he throws his arms. It's me and Brandon and my boy KG. And he like throws his arms around us and we're in like a huddle and he goes, "What do you do when you're at the mall and you're signing autographs?" And we're like, "What?" He's like crying. And I'm like, "This is Razor Ramon. This guy made it above everybody." I'm like, oh God. And at that point, man, I'm telling you, there's a huge part of me that checked out of the wrestling business. And I went, if he can't be fucking happy or successful, nobody fucking can. And it was one guy, one situation. I get it. But that's his perspective on what the business looks like at that point. That sucks.
Absolutely. Well, and let me ask you this. When was it that you decided that you were done with wrestling?
Like I said, that was probably a fucking pretty good time, but I had a couple phases of it. This is kind of, I could tell this a couple different ways, but I was 18 when I started, and I was a young 18. I looked young. I barely had a beard of any. I was a young kid, you know? And I remember the older guys, you know, hanging out around there. And this was right at the end of the 90s. So this is like the end of the territory guys that really didn't make it, you know? And they were telling the new local guys that were like this new fresh thing that got this new fresh deal. They were kind of against it. So it was like a whole thing, you know? I always remember telling myself then, like, when I'm that guy and I'm out of options, whatever that means to me at that point, I'm not doing this anymore. And JCW treated us great. We went all over the country. I saw some of the most, I've been to every state, man. I saw some of the most incredible shit on a Prevo tour bus, you know, sellout crowds. I mean, I got to see some cool shit. And I told myself when that was over, I was done. So like, we just did a bunch of tours together. And at this point, I'm a couple of years married. I'm kind of checked out at this point of wrestling in general. We lose the belts finally. We had it for like 3 years. We lose the belts, and I do an indie show like maybe a couple weeks later, and it was atrocious. And I got hurt, and I've never been hurt, and I got hurt. And I'm like, we go back to do the show a month later, and I get in the locker room, and I set my bags down and shit, and I look around the locker room, and I'm like, what am I doing here? It's not indie wrestling anymore. Every single person in this fucking back area, I'm better than. And I didn't mean that in like a conceited or cocky. They didn't belong in a professional wrestling locker room. They didn't belong in it. They didn't look the part. They didn't feel the part. Nothing about them said pro wrestler. Nothing about what they were doing said pro wrestler. It was embarrassing. It was fucking embarrassing. And I remember I called my brother the next day, who was my partner, and I go, that's it. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I took like a year and a half off. I went back and did one JCW show. We did this ladder match against the Ring Riders, who was a team that we brought in over there, and we just have awesome matches. So we did one more there, and then 6 months later, or 4 months later, the Gathering, we worked London and Kendrick and the Young Bucks, and then I checked out. Those are my last matches.
That was just it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I know. Like for me,
never looked back. By the way, I'll say that much. Never like I don't ever go, God, I want that one more match. I don't ever do that.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. Like every now and then, like I get that moment where I'm like, man, like I want to go back and prove that, like I actually could work. Because like I guess when I really got introduced to you, of course I'd heard of you before, up in the Chicago area. Jason Ayers was a good friend of mine. I know that he was working a lot of promotions with you up in like the Chicago area and stuff.
Was
like
at his wedding? Yes.
Yeah, and he. So that's how I got kind of turned on your stuff. But me and you ended up meeting in IWA. And I don't know if you remember me at that point in time, but
100%. Yes.
I was not in a good spot, like mentally. I was beat down mentally. I was having a lot of issues with like depression. And if I would have done drugs, I would have been screwed. Like I'd probably be dead right now, man. Like there would have been no coming back for me. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I don't know if you, I think the conversation, I think you were involved in the conversation, but correct me if I'm wrong. I've been punched in the head a lot of times. But I remember when somebody said that June Kasai did the razor boards, I was like, oh, that's stupid. I do razor boards. And then I'd never actually thought that anybody else would do it, so I didn't think that I was going to do it, right? And then the next day, it's on the website, IWA, Brandon Prophet versus Ian Rotten, razor board death match. And I don't know what it was. Like every time I wrestled Corp, I got like a concussion and like a knockdown. I don't know what the deal was with that, but it around that time for me, like I just had been so beaten down like mentally by my own depression issues and like just the dirtiness of the business and my IWA run sucked. I think it ruined my whole like my all the momentum I had in wrestling, because going into that 2005 King of the Death matches, I had a really good buzz on the internet. I'd already wrestled I'd been wrestling on the East Coast. I'd already been wrestling in Mexico. I'd already gone all over the place and done all this stuff. And I came to IWA and I just mentally shit the bed, man. I fractured my neck.
I could tell you the whole thing of where it went wrong. Literally from the inside, 100% part of every single conversation from start to finish about you.
Sure.
Do you want to have that conversation? I mean, does that seem cool?
Yeah, we can do that.
It might help you out. I mean, honestly, man, going into that King of the Death, that 2005, IWA had a shitload of momentum going towards deathmatch wrestling because they had like that 1.5, 2-year run where they were just doing like, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe type deals, right? And now they were getting back into that shit. And they were starting to do those combined type, strong style deathmatch matches, right?
Sure.
And then anybody that came to IWA, the whole thing was you got to prove yourself. Now, some people can do it in the first spot anytime. Some people can do it the first time they come out in an entrance, right? Other people then do it and it takes them for fucking ever and they never ultimately get over, like OMG, right? Sure. The guy has been on how many IWA shows and couldn't pay to get over, sure. Right? So it was one of those crowds, and it was almost like a thing in time, right? It doesn't exist today. There's not a place you can go and just get over. If you get over, you get over. It doesn't work like that anymore, right?
Sure.
So you had buzz because didn't you get into some kind of something on the internet with Ian, or you said something to Ian, or you said something about IWA on a message board. Am I right or wrong?
I think what it actually was, Ian had actually offered to bring me in a long time ago. Prazak contacted me. And they offered to have me come in, and they said they were going to do this and they were going to do that, and they were going to push me and get me over and teach me this and teach me that. And then that whole thing with Dustin and Nadia Nice went down. So I chose Bros, and by the time I ended up coming, I think that Ian kind of had heat with me going into it because there were so many people on the internet saying that I was so much better than this or so much better than that, which may or may not be true. It probably wasn't true, but that's not.
I'm going to tell you this much, man. You people give Ian too much credit when it comes to certain things like that. If you came in and just got over, it'd be water under the bridge. All that shit. He wouldn't even think twice about it. I'll tell you where it happened. You got put in a difficult spot because 2005 King of the Death, the opening round was all 3-ways, right? 3-way dance, right? And it was 2 known deathmatch guys against what Ian framed local jobber. That's basically the way that he put it. So you were put in a spot where that anybody there that didn't know who you were just looked at as a local jobber, or anybody that heard the commentary or the build up to what that was.
Oh, he jobbed me out hard on the commentary too.
What's that?
He jobbed me out hard on the commentary too.
I did.
No, Ian did.
Oh, I was like, wow, sorry, man, because I jobbed. A lot of commentary. I apologize. It's a different time, but that's kind of the point. So they just, and then if you look at the fight, you just kind of got beat up by, it was Necro and Corp, like the two fucking worst guys to be in a death match with, as far as where you're going to take a lot of fucking shit from them because they don't give a fuck. They're gonna rock and roll out there. I've been in the ring with both of them. So coming out of that, then, you went into that razor blade board match, and I think you gained a lot of people's respect out of that. But you still seemed like a young boy fighting a senior guy. Does that make sense? Like it seemed like they were still senior guys over you. You never broke past that point. If you were able to break past that point, I think you would have made a name for yourself. You would have got to a lot of other places. You would have got over to Europe and a whole mess of things, I think, at that point, because that's just kind of the way that the business went at that point. Would you agree, not agree, or?
But no, I definitely agree, and I think that there was, I think that first off, going back to that match, like I do remember, like talking with Necro, and what we tried to do with that match is we were very aware of the fact that I was being like the whole purpose of me being in that match was to get my ass kicked. That was the whole purpose, like because going into Indianapolis, it was like IPW versus IWA, and like I was IPW's only. At that time, I was the only person in IPW who had any internet buzz at all. And I'd already wrestled Corp and Necro, and we'd had like competitive matches where I went over and things like that. But going into it, like I kind of got the feeling that the purpose of the match was not for me to come out of it looking good. And I'd actually fractured my neck 2 weeks before wrestling Die Hard. So I come out and we're talking to Necro, and we actually talked about the difficulty of the position that we were in with this match. And so the whole point of the match was that I got the shit kicked out of me and I kept kicking out. You know what I mean? Like, because if you look at it, like I went through a ridiculous amount of ass beating and I kicked out of a ridiculous amount of shit. It was silly.
Yeah.
And I think after that match, I feel like the crowd was optimistic about my future. And then the next night, like I was already beat up because of my neck, and I got the shit kicked out of me. My eye was like half swollen shut, and I had to work with Danny Havoc, which is cool. I love Danny Havoc.
That was his debut death match.
That was his first one.
First ever.
Oh wow!
Because we saw him and he came in the back and he walked right up to Toby Klein. Because Toby Klein, no, I take that back. Toby Klein was his first match the night before. When the night you wrestled those two, he wrestled in that one. And I remember he walks up to them and he goes, you can just get me out. Go on, you guys can cut me. It's no big deal. I remember Ben and I looked over and we're like, who the fuck is this guy? We're like, are you fucking kidding me? Do you know who you're getting ready to get in there with? And sure as shit, if you watch the opening spot, Toby fucking hits him. He fucking falls over for like the 619 deal, and right away with the barbed wire, whop, 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 and fucking opens him right up.
That's what he told me too. He was like, you can just beat the shit out of me. And I was like, I don't know, man. I came here because wrestling is fake. You know what I mean? But I'll tell you what really
got him over though. I mean, he's now all over the world, man. The dude's seen a lot of places now,
and he's a top tier death match. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think what killed that match was Hellaway Assassin is horrible. Anytime I had to do anything with Hellaway Assassin, I did not want to even show up to the show.
That bad, huh?
Oh God, we mentioned it briefly on the last one. My match with my first ECW arena match was for PW, and I had to work with Hellaway Assassin, and I literally wanted to quit instead of go out there. Like I almost just packed my shit and was like, you know what, I can't even do this. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I've been around him a lot. I've never been in the ring with him or really seen him work other than a couple gatherings. So
he's a super nice guy. He's just
100%.
Yeah, so I mean, which kind of makes me feel like a dick, but it's the truth. But
it is what it is.
I think the Bull Payne match is what killed me.
100%. I can't trip myself, kid. That's what he kept telling you.
But because going into that, like I think that I had the crowd, but you know what it is? Bull Payne was somebody that I marked out for. I'm sorry, what's that?
Me? I'm listening.
Oh, okay. So it sounded like you were kind of cutting in and out there.
Sorry.
So I'd kind of marked out for Bull Payne going into it. I mean, being 14, 15 years old and looking, getting that IWA stuff, trading those tapes, I kind of marked out for Bull Payne. So I really wanted that match to be good. And I lost my gig, and he's rubbing barbed wire on my forehead, and I can't find the gig anywhere. So like then in my head I'm like, oh shit, dude, I just screwed up this whole match. He has this thing with Jimmy Jacobs going on, and I'm have barbed wire. Like so, if you look, like I'm trying to like actively like get color off the barbed wire, and he looks down and he said nah, he goes knock it off, kid. And then like so the whole rest of the match I'm just like shit, dude, I just want Bull Payne to look good, and I just screwed up the whole thing. So. But I honestly, I think that's what killed it for me. Then, I was already in that mental state where I just wasn't a good spot, and I was reading message boards too much, and I took stuff to heart I shouldn't have taken to heart, and I blew that. That was on me.
Yeah, well, man, it is what it is. Like anything else, I mean, I think it all depends on what you get out of it. Because you know what, I never had a WrestleMania moment either, and I did just fine. I mean, I have a great life now. Make a great living, and I owe a lot of it to wrestling because I was able to take the skills that I learned and negotiating and how people are and catching people on bullshit from word one. I took it and I applied it in my field. So I don't have any lack of love for it, but I don't have any fantasy about it either. And I kind of see it super clear at this point. Like the whole process, So I'm glad I got out of it when I got out of it because I'm still healthy, I still have a positive outlook on a lot of things. I never was a drug addict, although I like to smoke weed, fucking, hang out once in a while.
Sure.
That's about the extent of me. So I think I got out unscathed.
Right. I think for the most, like I think it was definitely the right move for me because wrestling is a very mentally intense business because you're constantly being taken advantage. People are constantly trying to take advantage of you. They're constantly talking shit behind your back. You got some asshole on a message board who's constantly just like, saying ridiculous stuff. And the overwhelming, like for me, the overwhelming response by people is positive. But when you fixate on that negative, like wrestling, if you're not healthy mentally, wrestling will eat you alive. And I think that's what happened to Chyna, getting back to that main point.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things happened to Chyna. She definitely had a nervous breakdown that went unattended, from several years ago. I think that whole thing with Triple H, I definitely think it made her turn right in her brain, and she never got help to get it to center back up. But she's had a hard 10, 15 years, man. So it's not one incident. It's layering and layering and layering of incidents, and it's just a tortured fucking person, man.
Sure. Well,
those videos were fucking unbelievable that she put out. She's just hallucinating.
Oh yeah. Well, and speaking of videos, like I think that you can tell, like in the porns that she put out, she is literally miserable in those movies.
Miserable.
Yeah, you can tell, like even
she fucks soulless. Like there's nothing sexy about it. If you watch them, you're just kind of like, it's Chyna.
Yeah. Well, you can tell by watching it that like. You watch some of these girls and you're like, that girl's totally into this, right? I mean, yes. whether she's pretending or not, you at least can believe that she is.
Right.
With Chyna, like I felt like I was watching like a sexual assault.
You know what? I never really looked at it that way because I was just watching Chyna fuck some dude, dressed like Hulk Hogan. But yeah, I can see what you mean, 100%.
Like if there's anybody out there that has not seen that video or has even, go back and watch when Mean Gene jumps in. Like the look of sadness, like it just like the disregard is so like I don't mean to laugh. It's so horrific.
Did she pick the talent? Like did she say I want to work with Mean Gene, Hulk Hogan, and whoever? Those are the two that stand out to me. Yeah. Or do you think they came to her and said, "This is who we're using"?
Oh, absolutely. They came to her. They were like,
and she rolled her eyes like, Mean Gene.
Yeah, well, no. Well, and here's the deal. And again, I'm not trying to poke fun at somebody who's dead, but. I guarantee you, like she heard that and she was like, "Shit." But she was like, "Yeah, sounds great." You know
right?
What I mean?
Fuck it, I got to get that $100,000 or whatever the fuck they paid her for. Yikes!
But and like you notice a lot of times too, like older wrestlers especially, like they're so starved for that spotlight, that they're willing to go out there and get banged by Mean Gene and Hulk Hogan,
Together and go get a job for $11 an hour somewhere when you don't have when you're 40. The fuck, that's impossible. You put a fucking it's a pretty sad place to be in life, especially like if you're on the road, you didn't really make a lot of money, you didn't save a lot of money. Yikes! Fuck that.
Sure. Well, let me run this by you. I noticed when Chyna died, like she had worked a show here locally. I live in Indianapolis. She'd worked a show here locally. What is up with people like? Workers, if you will, who are in the business and they pretend like they're best friends with everybody that dies.
You got to realize, man, if they did one indie show with them, they're going to say, she was amazing. And you're like, amazing? You don't fucking know her at all. Because she said hi to you and didn't ignore you, she's an amazing person. Or whoever. I see it all the time. And like, every Monday and Tuesday, my page is bombarded with like 15 different legends every single Monday of wherever the fuck they worked. And said worker standing next to them with their arm around them, like, and they're doing the guy's hand sign.
Sure. Yeah, it's like I read these posts and they're like, oh my God, my Chyna, I just talked to you yesterday. No, you didn't just talk to her yesterday because she was freaking dead.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, she had been dead for days leading up to it. So you did not talk to her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it had to be terrible in there. When someone's dead for days, it's not good.
Oh, sure. Like, it blows my mind that like people are so desperate to believe in their own stardom and their own star power that they're best friends. Like I've met, and I know you have too. Like I've met a lot of like people that I looked up to, but none of those guys are my friends.
No,
you know what I'm saying? Like they don't care about me.
And that luster burned off after, I don't know when, but it burned off after a few times in a row where you're just like, this is just a business. They're no different.
Sure. I'll tell you when.
And if they don't help you, you don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about you. It's really simple.
And I'll tell you when that moment died for me is watching Jake Roberts clean a crack pipe.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. It's just fuck it.
I was like 19 and I'm glad that he's sober now and I hope I hate to see anybody die from
quote unquote sober.
As far as we know, he's sober right now. That whole Bray Wyatt CPAP mask was weird as
you
hell.
Can't tell me that's a sober video.
Yeah, I'll give you that. So again, we'll put sober in parentheses. I'm gonna hope for the best. But I remember I was like 19 because I actually started working shows when I was 14.
Shit.
And I didn't start doing. Nobody paid any attention to me until I started doing death matches when I was 18. But
sure.
I was sitting back there and he pulls out this little bag and he pulls out a crack pipe and he pulls out the little scrubber, and he goes, well, it's a shame to have a dirty crack pipe, and he starts cleaning it, right? And so I'm like, man, I really don't want to be sitting here right now, right? But I'm 19 and this is Jake the Snake Roberts, so I just keep my mouth shut. And then he's like, well, it's a shame to have a clean pipe and some rock and not smoke. And I was like, please, like in my head, I'm like, please don't do this.
He's gonna smoke crack right.
Then luckily, like his music is playing. They're like, Jake, you're out. You're out You need to go out, cut your promo, whatever. He goes out there with one boot unlaced, and I'm just like, that's the day the dream died for me.
Yep, there you go, man. It happens very easily. So, any other non-wrestling related subjects?
Oh yeah. Let me ask you this: when we first talked about this, that we talked about how we wanted to do like alien centric stuff.
Okay.
So now would probably, since we didn't touch on any of that on the last show, let me ask you this: what are your opinions? What do you think about aliens?
That is such a blanketed question. Like I got to give you explanations or definitions first before I can tell you what I think of aliens. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
So the word alien is misused. When I say alien, I don't mean green Martian Hollywood alien. I mean like alien, like foreign to this to anything we know. It could be an energy orb. It could be a rock. It could be a source. It could be a thing. It could be a widget. It could be a man. I'm telling you that.
Are you still there?
When I say alien, I don't know what the fuck it is. Fair enough? And if I say Martian, I mean Martian. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think we froze. Damn, Skype. How about now?
Are you back with me?
Yeah, you just going to edit that out, or do you want me just to keep rolling?
We'll just keep rolling. I think it picked up at the tail end of what you were saying. So
where did you last hear? Or what did you last hear?
Basically, you've got a very broad spectrum for what an alien might be to you.
Yeah, I'm just telling you that when I use the word alien, when I talk moving forward, I don't know what the fuck that is. If I'm talking Martian, I mean little green man that we've invented with Hollywood. Easy enough?
So let me ask you this. Let's focus for this right now. Let's focus on alien or Martians. I mean,
Okay.
do you believe in interplanetary visitors?
See, I can't talk from a Martian standpoint. Do I believe the little green man thing? I don't know what that is, but I do believe at some point in our lifetime that something came from up above and did something here. Yes, because of this reason. We're unearthing. This is like insanity what's happening all over the world right now. They're digging and finding worlds that are buried under soot and rock, and there's carvings in these walls. So these people from this time frame, that's how they tell their story. And dude, it's the most mind-blowing stuff. And some of my friends, my co-host Ben Jordan reads Graham Hancock. I always say his name wrong. It's either Hancock or Hitchcock. He writes all about this story and these aliens and this other being. And that's why you see when they unearth all this stuff, you're finding these perfectly carved pieces of stone that are precision, unbelievable, like, perfect corners that are carved into granite. It's impossible without some kind of machinery or some kind of tools. But when you reflect the time frame that this existed, the only tools that they would have had that they have on record would be like a chisel, like a bone, a dog bone, and you get hit with like another bone, or like a horse leg and shit. Like they used bone structures for tools, and that's being unearthed. So where are these things that did this precision cutting, that lifted this size stone, that stacked this size stone? I've been to the Tulum in Mexico. I've seen the Mayan ruins. I've seen this shit with my own eyes. I've seen the depictions written in the walls. I've heard the fucking legends from the locals. And dude, it's so much bigger than us. So I do believe in aliens. I do believe that something came here. And were they moving from somewhere else? And when I say they, this could be legitimately a source, man. I don't know what that is. Energy. It could be a ball of dust. Something came here and left something here and left and took off. And something was created. And that's where all this shit that they're unearthing now, you're finding out about it. This isn't crazy talk. Look in the fucking internet and you can see pictures and blogs and content. And dude, it's amazing. Are you hip to any of this stuff, or am I talking crazy to you?
No, actually, I've read some of Graham Hancock's books as well.
There you go.
Also, like Eric Von Daniken, and I'll admit, I don't know if you're familiar with Eric Von Daniken, but he clearly wants to be an expert on this. So sometimes he does do some reaching, but a lot of the stuff that he points out is true as well. And I think that,
how far off am I from what he believes?
That's the basic gist of it, is that humanity has been guided. Like I'm sure that plenty of people out here have listened or watched Ancient Aliens, so they're probably hip to a lot of this. But it's basically him as the people were guided by aliens, and there is, regardless of what anybody says, there absolutely is scientific evidence that does lend credence to these things. Now, whether or not you believe it or not, there is scientific evidence
if you don't believe in it, you haven't looked at it. That's the only way. Because a couple of years ago, I was like, alien schmalien, like, get away from me with that nonsense. Like, I just didn't care to hear about it until it was pitched to me with the idea that stop thinking Martian plane, sorcerer or saucer comes flying down, that weird ladder comes down, and the fucking green-headed big dude comes floating out. Like, eliminate that from your thought process. If it could be that, but let's stay away from Hollywood.
Sure.
And just think about what this means. We are not the only thing that's ever existed in this galaxy. There's no way you believe that. If you could think past a third grade education, right? How are we the only thing? There's light years of fucking planets and solar systems and even like other suns and other shit that we don't even fucking have any clue about. Something else existed, and I believe something buzzed in, and I believe that there was a culture of people, and I even think that they overused the Earth to some capacity maybe, and they fucking fled. Much like you hear about us fleeing one day and all this other, like it's almost like a kind of a funny thing. I think that may have happened here. I think that they knew of something or an occurrence did take place, because like when that big flood happened, everybody, all that shit was gone, and just these tombs lasted. And dude, it's so interesting, and so I don't think you can negate alien, but just be careful how you're talking about it. Fair enough.
Sure, and this isn't like when people question me and they're like, "Oh, you're crazy with this," because I'm super into aliens, man. Like I read books about aliens, I watch videos. I mean, we talked about this in the past on Messenger. Like, I mean, I've read and dug into some pretty far out there stuff. But when people say are aliens real, everybody agrees that the mathematics are universal, right?
Of course.
It's the universal law. Like everything that happens in existence has some sort of mathematical correlation, right? So
absolutely.
Using math alone, right? We live in a universe that everybody agrees is infinite. There's no end to it, right?
Right.
So there's literally an unimaginable, like a number that's so big and so sweeping and so crazy, this number of galaxies, and each one of these galaxies has millions or thousands or who knows how many planets inside of it. I mean, our galaxy could be a tiny little baby galaxy that's not even I mean, it is. I mean, it's not even. It doesn't even register on the scope of the universe. And just think about how big our galaxy is. And as far as we know, there's galaxies out there that dwarf that make ours look like a speck of dust, like in just an empty nothingness. You know.
That's why if you're caught with the whole Jesus factor and you think we've only been around for X amount of thousands of years, you're missing it. This is infinite, and it's going to go on forever in some kind of capacity. So. It's just intriguing, man. And I think the deeper you dig, man, the more and more intriguing it gets, and the more the story makes sense, and the more it's just, it's incredible. Well, I put it this way: I don't believe in the Big Bang Theory anymore. I don't believe in that theory. I believe in an alien type. Something came here, brought something here, and cultivated this planet. Literally.
I think that the universe had to have always existed. Like there's no like what came first.
How do you answer that though? I'm just going to be the dick. How do you answer that? Because what happens? How does nothing come from something? Does that make sense?
Exactly. Well, exactly. That and I don't know, like, because the scope of that is beyond what we can even understand. Like, because everything in humanity is based off limitations. Like my understanding of how this computer works is based off of what I know its limitations are.
Of course, great point.
And you can't possibly know the limitations of time and space and dimension and existence and you mentioned Jesus. You can't even know, like, if and I'm not going to debate whether or not God is real, but if you even know, like, if you believe in God, like, there's no possible way that you can even begin to fathom what God is. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And like so my thing is this: is like, let's say the common perception or the common accepted theory is the Big Bang Theory, and you mentioned that. So let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
So it boils down to specks of cosmic dust and debris. They mixed up, they reacted, they exploded, they created this infinite universe. And my question would be, which is what you stated this earlier, where did that dust come from? You know what I'm saying? So
I'll say this much. I believed in the Big Bang Theory because I didn't want to believe in the Jesus theory. So that was like a default. I just believed that. You know what I mean? Like, much if you don't like Bernie Sanders, you like Donald Trump. You know how people fall in that little paradigm? Sure. I was in a paradigm. So I didn't really know the difference at the time of.
Oh, well, and we
if I'm
froze
being
up
honest.
again for a second. The last thing I got was that the Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump.
I already lost my train of thought.
No, I understand what you're saying, but let me ask you this question. Now, putting religious fanaticism aside,
sure,
why can't Jesus and science coexist? Like, why can't God exist in a world where science is true?
This is the problem. It's this goddamn book. When you read that book and you read what's in that book, if you can't look at it and say, some of it's meant to be taken literal and some of it's meant not to be. You can't look at it that way. It's either it's a book, you follow all to the word, and your God hates fags people. That's legitimately the people that follow that to the fucking word, right? Or you're the opposite. You're just your average Christian that goes on the holidays and some random Sundays when they feel up to it what's the connection between the two, right? Like they're like what's the belief system in between the two? So even just religion as a whole, it's such a deeper conversation. So what groups are we talking about? You know what I mean? Like, am I answering that?
Well,
right?
Sure. And I think too, what a lot of people they don't grasp too that like any Judeo-Christian religion started off as a study of Gnosticism. And what Gnosticism, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but what it is it's just like it's basically, it's like knowledge is the way to get to God, right? So so through gnosis you understand God, right? So when people wrote these books, they were being taught from a Gnostic viewpoint. So that viewpoint was not that you can go move a mountain. That was not the viewpoint. The viewpoint was the moral behind the story. The story, what that means is, and I'm actually I identify as a Gnostic Jew.
Okay, what is that exactly? Give me the high spots of that.
I believe like in the core thesis of the Judeo religions, right? But I believe that the gnosis is true. So what that means is, for instance, this guy, like I grow a beard because it's a symbol, like, for me. And again, I'm not saying anybody else's viewpoint is right or wrong, because gnosis allows for any other viewpoint to be correct. Like there's different avenues to the same end, right? This guy, I was working this crappy security job after wrestling, and this guy would give me shit all day long, dude. Just talking so much shit because I was allowed to have a beard, and he had been working security 25 years and had to shave every day, right? So finally he just kept going. He kept asking. And I was like, look, man, I don't want to say anything that's offensive to you. Like, I respect your right to believe whatever it is you want to believe, and like what your life has led you to believe. And he just kept going. And finally he was like, well, Jesus says this and this says this. And I asked him, I said, so in the Bible it says that if you command a mountain to move, that mountain will move, correct? And he said, yes. And so I said to him, so you believe that you can literally tell a mountain to move and it'll move? And he said, yes. And I said, so since you believe that, go over there and tell that apartment building to move. Right? And so then he got up. He's like, well, I can't tell the apartment building to move, and blah, it says not to question God and to test God. And I says, like, and my point to him is you cannot tell a mountain to move and it'll move. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that if you want the mountain to move, you'll be given the tools to move the mountain. You might have to take a stupid little spade shovel and chip away at that mountain forever, but you can move the mountain. You see what I'm saying? And that's...
I get all those child anecdotes, and I can appreciate it to some extent, okay? I don't need it for my moral compass. I don't need it for a reason why kids should or should not be in the room when this or that or this is being said or happening. I'm tired of it being forced into my world. If I'm being real honest, I don't give a shit what anybody does, thinks, believes, teaches their kids, lives their lives, what they do for a living, as long as they do it over there.
Sure.
And I want the same respect. I don't like when people throw it in your face. I'm over religion, man. I'm over it. I'm over them not paying taxes. I'm over that shit. I look at this from a complete different standpoint. I think religion as a whole, when used for the good part of it, like to be good to other people, yeah, I'm good with all that. But you don't need religion to do that to people. Just be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, religion is the biggest killer of people ever.
Agreed. I think it's the worst thing in the fucking world. If you look at the history of war and what it's over over religion. It's insanity. My God over your God. It's my team is better than your team. It's weird.
Well, absolutely. And people have lost track of the fact that the faith is one thing, and that's a relationship between you and whatever you believe, like spiritually or whatever higher power or whatever existence. I mean, maybe you're the higher power. You know what I'm saying? And that's whatever. That's faith.
Sure.
That.
Dude, I totally believe that, man. I used to give. Go ahead.
Oh, that relationship is faith, and men telling you that something is right or wrong, that's religion.
I have a problem with the middleman. You need to believe, you need to do this, you need to do that to get to this. I'm telling you, man, It's spirituality. I don't like religion. I like spirituality. I used to be an atheist. Yeah, I was a Lutheran turned atheist turned agnostic because I just see it differently. Like I say, I went to the Mayan ruins in Mexico, and I met with this shaman, and we got to walk through this ancient land and swim in this and all this shit, and it was like a fucking awakening for me because they smartened me up to just energy and shit and your environment and what is what and how things all make sense and what common ancestry is. And when you look at common ancestry as a core, just a core, everything kind of levels out and makes a lot more sense. So I have an appreciation for it, but I'm sorry, man. The overall just religion and the sham of what is the behind the scenes stuff of a lot of religion shit, I don't like it at all. I don't like it. Personally, though, I say go for it.
Well, sure, and I agree with that as well because my standpoint is whatever higher power exists, whatever force of reckoning there is, like why would that create you to hate?
Right, and not for nothing, man. I hate when people show the babies on Facebook all burned. Type 1 for amen, and I'm like no, Jesus. That's Jesus. Jesus does everything. He's the all creator, right? Arguably, he creates everything because he creates tragedy too. My favorite is when people go, "Well, Jesus did that to you because he knew you can live with it." What? Yeah. What? Yeah. Wait a minute. What? So what did I do to deserve that?
Well,
what?
You have to believe one of two things. Theory one is, and people try to have it both ways, but you can't have it both ways. Theory one is that God is all-knowing. He knows everything that's ever happened, everything that will happen. He has got his finger on the pulse of everything, and he can change everything at will. And if that's the case, then everything bad that's ever happened to you is because God chose for that to happen to you.
Right, wanted it to.
Sure. And theory number two is that you have free will, in which case you're just thrown in this muck of chaos and you do the best with it you can, and it's all up to you. It's all your choice. But people have this notion that
both sides, though, say that Jesus created everything. He is the sole creator. Both sides believe that, so it's hypocritical. Even if they have that other viewpoint, they still believe that he created everything.
Sure. And maybe that, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but the notion that you can have free will and predestiny, the notion that God would give you free will and then come down and be like, oh, you screwed all this up, let me fix this for you, or oh man, you did this, so now I'm going to give you cancer. Like, that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It can't be both ways. And what's the point? Like, I think that it is completely ridiculous to believe that if God is real, that he is down here walking you through life.
Dude, their timeline doesn't add up historically. That's my point. There's gods before them with very similar stories. And what do you do when you copy something? You take very similar key points. You can grab some of that demographic and bring them over. It's just what it is, man. And it's a story that's gone on way too long. Way too long. And the internet's killing religion. It's killing.
And if Jesus is real, if there really was a Messiah that was born to earth and all that, if Jesus is real, then he is way older than 2,000 years old, because Egypt was talking about him. Mesopotamia was talking about him. There were all these different places that predate any of this stuff by thousands and thousands of years.
The Crusades came in, torched everything, blew out all the fucking books, and they rewrote the Bible in the way that they saw it. So any stories of Jesus Christ don't even exist. It's all fake. It's all written by somebody else 100 years later. That's a real story. Period. It's not real.
Sure.
Unicorns, man. 8 mentions of unicorns.
And that's why I believe in Gnosticism, because it's all about the personal nature. But again, my grandma's Catholic.
Like I say, do it over there. It doesn't matter. Like that's amazing. I think all that's amazing. Just like, for instance, a guy gets fired at work over drugs recently. And for like the next 3 days, he's texting me about how the devil did this to him, and he's going back to church and all this shit. And I'm rolling my eyes, going, dude, go away. You fucked up, man. Leave us alone. Like, stop with the fucking Jesus shit.
Sure. Accept responsibility for the choice that you made.
It's not the devil. It's you.
You're just an asshole.
You're just an asshole. You just do dumb shit.
Do you want to hear something funny? Actually,
of course.
Incidentally, I
Wait,
don't know.
do you want to hear something funny?
Yeah. Oh no! You just Billy Graham'd me. Is that directed to me or to you?
No, that could be to anybody. Yes, we definitely throw that on when Billy Graham's on because it doesn't stop.
When I listened to that episode, I literally was at my desk at work. I cried. I literally cried because in my real I got my barbecue business that hopefully will become my full-time job soon.
Nice.
But I work in I'm a home detention officer, and I work for a private company.
What does that mean?
Well, I work for a company that makes equipment, and we make software, and then we also contract out services. So, like for instance, like where you live, like they have a home detention. You know what home detention is, right?
No, I really don't.
It's basically like you're in jail at your house. You wear the anklet.
Oh, sure. Okay, right. Yeah, house arrest.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work in that field, and I do I supervise.
You
some
monitor
people.
it and shit. You make sure the people are at home.
Yeah, make sure I make sure they're where they're supposed to be, and I supervise other case managers. And
do you chase motherfuckers down when they're not at where they're supposed to be?
We've done some pretty gangster stuff that I'm not sure. And again, I worked for another company first, and that's where we got away with a lot of stuff that I'm not really sure is legal.
Sure.
And we're not allowed to do that where I work now because there's this huge corporate hierarchy, and I'm doing more and more stuff with equipment and customers and stuff like that, and less with
drones. Yeah, like you watch people with drones.
No, all my people have GPS anklets on. So like, and it's funny because crap, I'm not sure how much information I should give out here, but
yeah, right.
We have some very cutting edge technology that allows us to forcibly communicate with people, and they don't have a choice as to whether or not they accept said communication.
Hilarious. So you talk to their phones?
I'm leery of giving too much information because I don't want.
You don't want to do this with me, man. I dig. I'm the worst on this shit. You podcast of mine. Don't even get in this conversation with me.
Yeah, let's skip that part because I don't want people to Ian Rob.
But I got a lot of questions about that topic. That sounds incredible. So if you ever leave that job, please come on the show and tell me about it immediately.
Oh well, and I truly hope that these days are about over for me because it's basically just swimming in the misery of other people.
Sure, the worst job ever, right?
God, do you know what it's like to look at like a single mom who's been smoking crack and she's in treatment? And you have to bitch at this lady about money is ridiculous. Like, I mean, I get it. It is what it is.
Do you mind me asking that? Like, what are you yelling at her about? Like, why are you yelling at her about money?
Well, I'm not much of a yeller. Like, I don't know if I'm pretty quiet in person. But, I mean, you have to pay for it. Like, if you don't pay for it, we don't make money. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, it comes down to, are my kids going to eat or are you?
Right. So how do you get them to pay? That's what I'm asking you. I guess, can I ask you that or no?
Well, you just appeal to their humanity, like however you can. I mean, there's people do it different ways. I just tell people the truth. I'm like, look, man, like I gotta eat, like.
So are they paying you so that you don't take them in? I'm confused at what they're paying you for.
There are traditionally you have to pay for it. Like if you don't pay for it, like then you can't be on the program. There are some areas.
The house arrest program is what you're saying. So they got to pay for the bracelet, or they got to pay for what?
They got to pay daily to be monitored, like every day.
No shit.
Yeah, there's a fee that adds up because house arrest is meant for people who work and meant for people who contribute. But unfortunately, it's being used as a civilian jail now because so many jails are overcrowded. It's like
crazy.
Yeah, up in the Chicago area, the amount of people that are on home detention would blow your mind. It would literally just blow your mind. And like here in Indianapolis, there are thousands of people on house arrest.
No shit.
Yeah, I literally had a guy who'd been arrested not once, not twice, not 3 or 4 times, 5 times for murder.
How's that possible? Wait, how's that possible?
Somehow he I don't know if they were no filed or what he did, but somehow if he murdered somebody, he got away with it. And
wow.
I don't know how that happened, but it legitimately happened.
And he's on house arrest for the 5th one?
He was on house arrest for carrying a handgun as a serious violent felon. That's what they pinched him for. And he was actually one of the best guys that I've ever had on my caseload, by the way. Like one of the best guys that I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
This guy was legitimately he was a good guy to deal with. The only time that he ever like lost his cool was we have these guys called techs and they fix equipment.
Sure.
Like they'll install it on you. He one of the guys was just a dick, and he would like be pissed that he had a job. I guess like in a world where so many people are starving, you're pissed that you have a job.
Right.
And
Doesn't add up.
Yeah, and he just like talked shit to the guy, and the guy called me. He's screaming. He's like, fuck this guy. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know. And I called him. I was like, bro, just calm down, man. There's no reason for that guy to talk to you like that. I'll handle it. You know what I mean? You gotta have respect for people regardless of their situation. If you hope to appeal to any sort of decency about them, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, totally. Very interesting, man.
Yeah, one of these days we'll get into some more detail when I'm not afraid I'm gonna get fired.
Sure, yeah, I don't blame you there. I'm cool with that.
So let me ask you this, and then I guess we'll kind of wrap this up because we're pushing an hour here. What is it that got you into podcasting?
Wow. Well, we started in 2008, so it was just blog talk on a cell phone. It sounded terrible. I just like, for me, man, like, I guess I like doing shit, but I like doing shit that takes little to no effort, right? Like, I like bowling. It takes little to no effort. Take the ball, throw it down the lane, right? Podcasting is kind of that way. I can do a weekly show and put it out there, and we get a lot of listens, man. I mean, it's shocking. We don't do this with any consistency. We've just done it for so many years that we just kind of grab people and they listen for a period of time and they come back and forth, and we've just been lucky, I think, that way. So I think I got into it at the right time because not a lot of people were doing it, and we just kind of got in before everything took off. And when it took off, we were in the right place at the right time. So I think it was just a timing thing, and now I'm doing it so long that it's almost part of my life that I don't want it to go away. So that's kind of hard to answer that. There's several ways I could answer that. How about you?
Honestly, I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to feel about it, and but after we did that show last week, I really had fun. Like, I don't know if the show is good. It might suck. I don't know.
You got to look at this, man. It's not about that shit. It's about just talking from sincere, just being real sincere. If you're sincere about a topic and you cover a topic from your perspective, that's all podcasting is. That's what's great about it, And you could add music in and drops and all sorts of shit that you want to do to it, and it really becomes fun when you listen back to it or people listen back to it and they're like, well, that sounds like a real radio show. And you're like, yeah, I'm doing it in my fucking basement.
Sure.
It's awesome.
Well,
freedom.
I noticed that some people who had deleted me in the wrestling business re-added me. And I think that a lot of that had to do with the fact that I stated several times that nobody cares about the people in these stories. And it's, again, it goes back to how fickle people are in wrestling. Because let's be honest, man, I can admit that at the end of the day, like, I didn't really matter to wrestling and nobody really cares. You know what I'm saying?
It is. I've learned a long time ago. It's what you make of it. It's what you take with it to like the next spot. You know what I mean? That's really all that it is, because none of us really meant anything, man. Nobody. If you're not doing WrestleMania, making big business, you never contributed to the wrestling business, and that's the sad part about it. But again, I think it's sadder if you're moving through your 30s and you're still doing it mid to late 30s. That's fucking sad. Especially just indie wrestling. It's like local play at that point. So.
I feel like that my greatest contribution to wrestling was actually probably at this point Ricochet. Like, I would have said Chuck Taylor and Ricochet, but I think Chuck Taylor's kind of moved on, unless I'm missing something. But I don't really know
about Chuck Taylor anymore. I don't see him at all. Does he still wrestle? I don't pay attention, so I'm terrible at this anymore. Wrong guy.
I think that he's done. Like, he still does PWG. I don't know. I don't really read results or anything anymore. But I mean, Ricochet is tearing up, and I'll tell you this: Ricochet is probably the best high flyer. I think he's the best high flyer now, as far as like flippy guys go. And I think that he has a chance at staking his claim of being the best ever.
He's really up there, man. I wish the machine would get behind him and fucking push him to the moon, and he'd be a new guy, and it would be incredible. So the timing's there for him right now, man. He's in a really good spot. So
I think he kayfabed me the other day, like, because I talk to him all the time. And also, by the way, I hate when people use wrestling terms in regular conversation. So I'll admit that I'm a douchebag for doing that.
I get caught up in it all the time 'cause it's easy. It's just an easy way to talk.
Well, yeah, and it makes sense like when we're talking to each other, but it does not make sense like, God. I'll save that story for another day. But I've seen some ridiculous stuff like people talking in Carney in the locker room. Like,
Sure.
What are you doing? They're like, who are you kayfabing? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think that I talked to him the other day and I asked him, I was like, look, man, are you talking to the WWE? Is this going to go down? And he kind of no-sold it, like, but
It's fun.
I think the guy's gonna. I think he'll be there sooner rather than later. And he's so crisp and he's so fresh and his look is good. I remember this kid was like 16 and I had to beg Mike Burns to book him on an IWA Deep South show. I actually bet my entire payday that Chuck Taylor and Ricochet would kill it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and if they would not have killed it, I may not have paid my rent that week. That is a possibility.
No shit.
Yeah, because it was literally like IWA Deep South was a good stop for me, man. I killed at those shows.
Right.
Well, I guess now's probably a good time to wrap it up. I appreciate you coming on, man. Hopefully we can do this on a regular basis, man.
Whenever you need me, man, I'm a podcast. I do it all day long, man. I love doing them. Thanks for wanting to do it. Thanks for contributing. It's awesome. So, and man, I can't tell you, just run with it. Do whatever. Interview anybody. Talk about anything because it's fucking interesting to somebody. Yeah.
Well, I think we may have some decent guests coming up. So, I don't want to count my chickens before the eggs hatch or however the hell that saying goes. But we'll see how that goes. And again, I appreciate you being on the show. I'm Brandon Prophet. It's Vito Thomaselli. This is Prophet FM.